Welcome back on deynonmod. Today I want to propose you a video about
the assembly, study and personalization about the Barrow Guard that come from the Deathrattle army set of the Soulblight Gravelords 2025. About this army set, if you're interested, you can find the link in the description about the unboxing itself. And about the Barrow Guard, you have to remember that they are not different from the ones that you can find in the normal ones, so they are exactly the same, even if you bought them separately. It's only that I have this box and I wanted to make it see because it's amazing. About the Barrow Guard, you have 4 screws that are identical and each contain 5 models each. I think that it's come from the Great Guard that usually had 5 models. This is going to replace those models, and the unit from the Soulblight Gravelords Battle 2025 start from 10, so I think that it's simply because this. Still, they are really amazing sprue, and I'm going first to study about the instruction and then step by step build, because I've seen that there are tons of different combinations, so I had to understand if eventually I can magnetize, because it would be really quite interesting eventually to have different options that you can interchange. Otherwise, if it's not, because the pieces are really quite small, really convenient to magnetize, you have to choose how you want to build your models, so know before what you're going to do. I think that it's a really good thing. So let's start. So let's start to see about the instruction. We can find that the champions has different options available, some with the shields that are only to choose the weapon, eventually the position, and others with different weaponry, so this mace and this halberd. So I think that it's something that you have really to think eventually. I really hope that it will be magnetizable, otherwise it will be really okay, have to personalize some things, but eventually it's also an option that gives you quite a tons of bits that you can recycle for other things. Also about the standard, we can find that we had the sword and shield, the halberd and the standard with the shield, so it's not bad too. And then we can find that we had the musician. Also here we have different ways, so it's really quite intriguing. And also with the halberd or the sword and shield, so eventually you can personalize quite a lot. Really, it's something that you have to decide how you want to create, because as you can see, both the sword and shield and the halberd are really magnificent. I really quite appreciate them. And the other things that it's interesting is that you can really eventually personalize the champion and so on, so you can have quite a lot of fun. And really, it's something that it's intriguing. Eventually you can try to modify, to interchange the weapon and so on, but okay, you have to pay attention. As you've seen, you have choices, but the choices are available or not. We have to study assembling them step by step. I really pay a lot of attention when you cut them from the sprue, because really you risk to break the things, because they are really quite thin. So even if you pay a lot of attention, you risk. So keep calm, repair the things, because it's not problematic. Moreover, they are skeleton weapons, so even if they are a bit damaged, it's not a problem. But okay, pay a lot of attention because they are really quite delicate. Okay, so first I'll polish everything. Here I repaired the weapon, as you can see, so it's not a problem. And then I study if I can magnetize, because I'll put together these pieces and see if it allows you to really put a magnet inside for both the body and the weaponry. Before gluing everything together, think if you need eventually to paint, because if you think about this piece here and the face, if you going to glue them together, you can see that you see a little piece here, but it's not really reachable, and also the face, it's a bit problematic to paint comfortably. So really, eventually think if you want to have all assembled or do this separately and then combine and refine, because it can change eventually. And now let's talk about the magnets. About the main body with the 242mm one, for example, it's not a problem to have, because you can really put inside the body without any issues. So it's really quite simple to do. But the problem comes when you do with the weapons. So okay, for example, with the sword, it's not a problem, but becomes eventually with the shield. Because if you think you can associate the shield here, building up, so it's really quite not a problem itself. But the 242mm one, it's too long. For example, you should use the 241mm. But the problem is that it doesn't keep really quite solid the positioning of it. And the same can be said for the halberd. So we can eventually do, but here I suggest you again to use a smaller magnet inside. So it is worth the effort to do this or not, because this is what you should think about, because it's doable, but at the same time it is worth to do such things, or better to build different models and then change when you need, because for example you want to have a separation or so on, or you really want to use all the weaponry available for the single model. This is something that you have to decide now before to start, because it's better to magnetize before start than to paint and really proceed. So really your choice eventually. One thing that anyway I suggest you to paint separately and then assembled, it's about the helmet, because it's much better, because you can paint without any problem the helmet and then put on the model itself, because otherwise you cover and it's more problematic to reach. So really I think that this piece, it's something that compared to every other things, it's better to paint separately and then glue together, because I think that is much better. Eventually you refine the little details after, but really it's much better for both the parts of the models. Another thing to notice, for example, about this standard bearer is that there are details that are too much, maybe, because for example, see this spine here, it's visible, but once that you cover this, you can't see that at all. So okay, it's nice that there is the details, but it's useless to paint, for example, because it's hidden. But think about, for example, having to modify the model and remove the upper part here and the bottom part and having it exposed. It becomes really quite intriguing, so you can really gain quite a lot based on how you want to personalize eventually the units and so on. So okay, sometimes are a bit too much, the details, but could be nice. For example, also here the part about this leg, the same, there is this part that cover, and it's really useless to paint because you have to see it really from the bottom. But think about removing this part here and it's visible, so you can really have tons of ways that you can personalize eventually, so not bad. One thing to notice also is that how much it's fragile these pieces, because you have to pay attention. Because for example, this I removed from the sprue and it was missing this part and I was not able to find. It's not a problem because I can remove also from this side and having a different standard. Because if you compare, all the standards are equal, you have one every 5 models. So it's useful, it's not a bad thing anyway. But you could think about having such options to personalize, to remove, for example, the upper part and change with another symbols. So use this as a way to have option to personalize, because otherwise it would be a pity. I'm really going to be because I lost this piece, but at the same time, it's an option to have a model personalized. About the standard bearer, I suggest you also to think about some options. For example, to paint the standard and the pole separately, because I think that moreover from the back it's much better reachable. And you can think about the left arm, because you could use the shield like you should have, but you can take, for example, also the weapon from the champion and make that it's really quite peculiar, so you can really have a lot of fun eventually. Or you could think about using the part about this shoulder and upper hand, so that you could then personalize, because you can cut off a weapon, for example the halberd, so that you can have such amazing effect. You need only to cut off and refine about the other arm, or you can think about adding something else. So you have really quite a lot of different things that you can use to personalize, because it has quite an aggressive position, so not bad. Moreover, you can change eventually the position of the pool itself. So it's how you decide how you want to personalize this model, but it has really quite a lot of potential. Okay, about the musician, I suggest you to paint them separately, so the body and the drum. Otherwise, if you put them together and you try to paint, there are some places that are still visible, but you do not be able to reach comfortably, so better to paint them separately. And then had the last two official models. Sincerely, I decided to build them as hardware one. This eventually you could risk to make the magnetize, because here the only real problem is about the shield. Or if you think you could put having the model like this, having the shield on the back, so that you could have an intro gain option. Obviously, you had to remove the part about the arm. But you can really personalize quite a lot. About the sword, sincerely, you could put removing the part about the hand, but you have still here a short weapon, so it's not necessary. Really, you can have quite a lot of fun with how you want to put them, because they have quite a lot of options to talk about. And remember that these are technically the only two models that are worth to monetize, because the musician, it's anyway 1 on 5, so it's okay to stay there. The other, it's the one that it's the standard build that could be left like this, because also that one it's 1 every 5, at least for now, for the rules that there are. And the champion, you could simply only build up 1 every 10 model, so it's not really something that you should having been worried about. And then had the last two official models. Sincerely, I decided to build them as hardware one. This eventually you could risk to make the magnetize, because here the only real problem is about the shield. Or if you think you could put having the model like this, having the shield on the back, so that you could have an intro gain option. Obviously, you had to remove the part about the arm. But you can really personalize quite a lot. About the sword, sincerely, you could put removing the part about the hand, but you have still here a short weapon, so it's not necessary. Really, you can have quite a lot of fun with how you want to put them, because they have quite a lot of options to talk about. And remember that these are technically the only two models that are worth to monetize, because the musician, it's anyway 1 on 5, so it's okay to stay there. The other, it's the one that it's the standard build that could be left like this, because also that one it's 1 every 5, at least for now, for the rules that there are. And the champion, you could simply only build up 1 every 10 model, so it's not really something that you should having been worried about. But why I talked about official models? Because technically we can create a sixth one that comes from the residual of the pieces that we have. And here it's the trick. We can go to see about the instructions. We built the model of the champion using the main body, but we have also the part that relate about the normal model. And the only part that it's missing is the back one with the skull, because we have another helmet, we had the main body, we had the weaponry, so it's not a problem, okay? We have tons of these things. So we can simply use this trick, and the back using this shield to block the sight. The only thing that we have to pay attention, if you take, for example, a normal model, is that we can use the part about a bit of green stuff, even not refined, because it will be covered by the shield, to create the back armor. And maybe the only real thing is to create the tissue here that it's related about the vest and so on. So it's really something that you can create with a little efforts. And about the skulls, sincerely, it's not a problem, because you want me to say that you don't have some skull remaining from other spruce that could be cut and prepared as the head. It's really easy to do, so it's not quite a problem. Or eventually you can use it like a ghost one. So it's really quite intriguing and quite easy to create a 6-1. And if you think that, for example, this army set you have that have 4 sprue like this, you can create 4 additional models with a simple little additional of good stuff. So I think that it's really quite worth, because it's almost like half an additional unit that it's available. So not bad. And eventually you can also think about preparing in different ways. The only thing that it suggests you, it's really about the shield on the back, because it's the one that makes that you can save quite a lot of details. But if you can sculpt, you can even create and prepare other models. So for example, create different champions, so create a lot of variety. So not bad. I really appreciate such models. They are really quite amazing ones. As I said, I decided to build with the halberd, but also the version that is with the shield and sword are not bad at all. I remember that eventually you could monetize. Sincerely, I do not suggest to do, because in my opinion it's not so great as option, but still available. And we could create also a 6-1. Maybe you need a bit more effort, but not bad. And there are some bits that remain that could anyway be saved and used for other projects, because anyway they're really quite nice. Or eventually you could think about a little trick. So use, for example, some skulls and so on, and create some tombstones, some I can say extra miniatures and so on that come out from the bottom, from the turret. It could be quite nice in my opinion. So these are not useless, because anyway you could decorate, you could personalize, or eventually if you have enough units you could use them to make them more characteristic, because it could be an option. Really, this has quite a lot of potential. In my opinion, are really amazing unit. And so here I have my 20 unit models assembled, and we have so other 4 available. These, as we've seen, come from the bits remaining. It's missing the back, but we've seen that we could create it, and the basing that it's a 28mm one. Now I'm missing them, so I'm using the 32mm ones. And here the real thing that you have to think is about how you want to assemble such unit, thinking that you are not going to monetize. So we have the option of having, for example, the champions available. Here you have to remember that for this unit it's 10 models for the unit as base, and we have 1 champion, so one of these options available. We have 1 standard bearer for every 5 models and 1 musician for every 5 models. So here comes some ideas. So for example, you could make that you have the 2 champions assembled in different ways, and then use one of the models that come from the bits to assemble as a halberd, so that you can, for example, substitute to 1 champion because you don't need, or so on. Or you could think about having anyway one of the models used like a white king, so assemble different ways and so on. So it's really quite intriguing. When it comes to have 20 models, for example, like this, it comes quite interesting. For example, having other 5 models, you could gain one other of these bits, so that you could create another unit of 10, simply because you could have, 25 of these with the bits that remain, create 5 extra ones. And so quite intriguing, because eventually you could create another half unit available, so not bad at all. But you have to think about what to do when you have 20 models about, because it comes quite intriguing to have more standards, but about musician come a bit massive to have 4 musicians in a unit of 20 models. Okay, so here you have some options. For example, you could build up the skeletons here that are the champion as standard ones, so it's not a problem eventually to mix with a unit of 10 models, so you can interchange them if you want to keep them pure, so not using something else. So you only need to switch these ones and you are okay. And then you can think about personalize. Okay, you can, for example, for the standard bearer, personalize using and change the, for example, the shield with the mace for the champion, so on. It's up to you. Or you could decide to make something different. For example, about the standard, you could put the halberd on the model with the standard, and the standard bearer put on one of the another models, so that you can create a different pose and so on, so change a bit the position. And same thing could be done for the musician itself, so that you have this position for the halberd, and for example you could use for the beats, so that you can add or subtract as you prefer, or create and put on another model. So you have eventually to adapt a bit, but it has quite a lot of options. Eventually you have to think if you really need to have so many of the standard bearer and the musicians, or instead to have one every 5 models, make one every 10 anyway. So it's really up to you about how you want to decide. It has really quite a lot of interesting options. Even if you think about keeping like it is, you could eventually think about having, for example, for this unit of 20 models, having 3 that are for switching. So for example, you can have 3 of them that could substitute the champions or so on, in case you want to build up with everything available. So have 4 the champions available, and having so to replace 3 of these with the 3 Albert and keep the 20 mods as they should be. And having the last one that you could build up, maybe combining with other spruce and so on in a White King. So you have really quite a lot of combination. It's really up to you, and you have tons still of materials, sprue and so on, that could be used to personalize. Eventually, as I said, you could use the shield themselves on the back of the models to make it more characterized, as you have done for these models eventually, or you could create the back, or simply to personalize much better and so on. It's up to you, but sincerely you have really quite a lot of interesting options available. There is also another interesting idea about the remaining of the Barrow Guard, and it's to combine with the remaining from the Barrow Knights, because we had the back that come from the standard bearer, and we can eventually combine so that we have a quite interesting part. So it's really quite nice. Eventually we have to pay attention about the bottom part here, that we have still to eventually use a bit of paper card or the green stuff. And about the weaponry, we can simply decide to remove the part about the arm, so remove the lance and put eventually the sword, or eventually cut the part here for this arm and eventually put the halberd, so we can really have quite interesting parts. So we miss only the part about the head and the part about the back here. So it could be an interesting option available, or eventually we can also substitute with the shield from, instead of the one from the Knights, the one here from the Barrow Knights themselves. So it has quite a lot of potential, these models, eventually. I wasn't able to resist to the idea to repair the broken standard, so I decided to clone the symmetrical part and so replicate it. I used the trick of the blue stuff. If you're interested, you can find the links in the description. And so here we have that I prepared the clone that is symmetrical, and really it's really quite nice, the result. It's not perfect, but I need something that it's recalling, so it's okay in my opinion. It's not a problem. And so I was able to have the model that it's complete. So a little bit of pay attention, still it's worth, because it's much better now, really. And as I said about the bits that remain from the Barrow Guard, you could combine eventually with the ones that remain from the set Waking Warlord, for example, of this army set that I said. And it's really quite intriguing, because you could simply use the main body here, cut off the part about the armor up here, and then put here behind this part of the Waking or Warlord, what to choose. And so the only thing that you have to do is to prepare the back here, so that you can have some mantles on, so to cover this little piece. And it's really quite intriguing, because you can gain at the end a Waking. So it's really quite simple, but really quite amusing to do, because you can really transform this model from being eventually a Barrow Guard, eventually that you can add modify a bit, to a completely new model and eventually a hero itself. So saving a lot of efforts and a little bit of combination of things, and it's really quite amazing. And then it's time to convert these bits into models. So I start from the head. I use the heads that come from the old Skeleton Warriors set. I remove the helmet from the skulls so that I can use the helmet for the Barrow Guards. And then I had to decide about the back, because as I said, I used tinfoil and green stuff to prepare the back and the little mantle here. But I had to decide about these shoulder pads that it's on the sheet, because to keep or not, I still to decide, but I do this step by step. So here I can start my voyage to make this as model. Remember that you can eventually use this to create White Kings, combined with what remains from the Wild Lord White King, or you can prepare something else. So it's really quite intriguing, and they can give you quite a lot of potential options, so not bad at all. Remember to wear some protection when you try to cut off these pieces, because they are quite small and it's quite easy to cut yourself, so a bit of protection is better. And so we can find that it's really quite good in such way. Eventually you can cut off a bit just with a bit of green stuff, so it's the part about the face that count, and it works. So the result is what we needed. So step by step we are going to make all of this. And so here are the models we had prepared, and it worked quite good, I admit, it's not bad at all. One thing anyway to notice when you go to prepare about the back of the model, you have also to pay attention about this little gap that there is between the skull and the helmet, because there is the little piece that you have to fill with a bit of green stuff, maybe put on, and recreate a bit of the back. So not a lot of trouble, you have only to pay a bit of attention, because it's something that you have to recreate to make it completely good. And so you have the model after finished with the green stuff. As you've seen how I proceeded, so I made first the gluing of the arms to the front here, so that it was able to limit the part where to use the green stuff. I used the tinfoil and some green stuff to create this shaping of the back of the armor. I created the part about the bone here, so that it was simple, so I decided to do. And then some of the tissue under here to make that it could make a sort of little vest and create a bit of discrepancy here to make that it was easier to paint and so on. And I prepared about the helmet, so that I was able to fill the gap and prepare so that it was quite intriguing. And then you have simply to prepare together. I made this little stamp here that it can be used, so that I can glue everything together. I can paint as a sort of bone and so on, so it's really quite a simple one. What it's missing is the part about this of the shield, that I have to think about removing this part of the shoulder pad that is from the arm that you go. And once that I put everything together, it's still simple, a lot of things, so how to paint before to glue everything together. And I have to think if to leave also the part about the arm, at least this part about the hand, or leave it, because it's something that it's to choose, and also the position, but I quite like. As you can see, I done different options for everyone, because okay, I was experimenting, so step by step I improved. And also here I made this, it's the one that goes about the musician. So about this I made in such a way that I can put everything together, but it would be a problem to reach some part of the armor if I glued everything from the beginning. So I decided to keep this aside. As you see, I made the same procedure for all of these models. and I quite appreciate sincerely these ones. So now what is missing is to go to paint them, and after I paint I decide how to use them, because anyway I could make them for the Grey Guard or something else based on my needing. So it's quite simple, but I quite appreciate what it come out, because as you've seen, it's been really quite simple. So preparing the helmet here, using the other part about other set and so on, it will be quite good without any problem, because I had those bits, so it was a way to reuse them. And so little by little they can gain quite a lot of intriguing, because there are 4 new models based on what you need. Remember that you can eventually use one as a Viking or so on. It's up to you to decide how you want to prepare everything, but they have tons of potential. So I had to remove the shoulder pad here from the shield. So it's not a problem, because you can cut from the back here, and you have only to pay attention about these little details. So it's better to go a bit angled so that you can remove in such a way, and then remove eventually the part that remain. One thing, eventually use some blue tack so that you can keep the things in position if you need, or to avoid that these jump away. It's something that you have to pay attention. Eventually wear a glove with the hand that keep the shield, so that you don't risk to cut yourself and avoid any misshape. So it's something that it's not a problem anyway, because you can gain quite a really clean one, as you can see. So you only need to do this for every model, or at least for the ones that you plan to modify, so that you can use the shield as the back here. So up to you decide how many of these you need to work on, or if you need to do this. And about the pieces that is being cut off, you can simply store them, because it could be really quite useful in the future. So you can add to the bits of this set that remain. That will be perfect to personalize other models, or to be used for basing or so on. So this gives you quite a lot of options to personalize and create really quite intriguing future options. So something to preserve. And now it's time to start to paint the models. And so you have the Barrow Guard once that it's finished. Here I have the 20 models. Here in the front had the ones that I modified from the bits. and I quite like sincerely the result. Here are the other ones. Here I decided to mix them with the King or eventually use them as substitute for these ones. I have only to find about other bases to put under it eventually. And about these models anyway are not bad in my opinion. They're really quite nice. The vests are quite good, and the armor at the end, it's a good support for the shield. And I quite like to decide to put the shield behind it because it makes it quite more personal eventually. As you can see here, it gives you quite a nice vibe. Eventually you can paint for sure better and so on, so it's not that a problem. It's how you decide what you can gain from this, but they're really quite nice in the middle, so if you hide them be here with the other models surrounding them, you don't notice them, so it's quite nice. I really quite like because the eventual part that it was not so great that it's the back anyway, it's for the most part hidden, so not bad at all. And about the standards, here are about the painting as it is, but remember that you can decorate them with different designs and so on. It's how you decide how you want to refine. Also the scheme of colors, this is the one that I decided to use, but you can use everything that you can appreciate. Really, these models are amazing. I love the different poses that you have and so on, because they give you quite a lot of variation even in the simple assembly of those, and not bad at all. And here we can have a comparison of the Barrow Guard against the eras of Skeleton, at least the most part of them. So we can see the Barrow Guard against the Sepulchre Guard, and sincerely it's not bad because lately I used the Sepulchre Guard as Barrow Guard. Here compared with the ones that come from the set of the Blood Bowl skeletons, so not bad at all. Here a older skeleton one that is much smaller, as you can see. It's much more intriguing if compared with a older skeleton one that is even bigger, so okay, not bad at all. And it's intriguing the comparison with the old, or better, one of the oldest of the Grey Guard. You can see that size are really quite similar. The head is much smaller. I understand that the old Grey Guard I painted really quite awfully, but it was a lot of time ago, and maybe I should repaint, but I quite like to still them. Then we can compare with the Cursed City ones, and about this we can find that they are really quite intriguing and similar. Remember that technically they should be combined, so here even if repackaged, the part about the Cursed City ones should be a sort of base that has seen the Barrow Guard evolving, so not bad at all. I quite appreciate also Hallgrim that see that this should be a really amazing King associated with the Barrow Guard. It's really quite amazing. I really quite love. And then we can see with Krell, so we can see that it's really quite nice to see one of the oldest skeletons. Okay, not the oldest version of Krell, but anyway, you can really find out that it's quite amazing to see the developing, and not bad at all. Really, this it's a model that I really quite like as Unity. It's one of the reasons because I wanted to buy the box itself, the army set, because I wanted to have this, then also the Barrow Knight, the King Lord itself on mount, so really quite appreciate, and I'm quite satisfied about this, and I think that I need even more of these ones. So what do you think about such models? Sincerely, I find them really quite amazing. I love the dynamic of the positioning that they have. They seem to advance and slash really quite amazing, because they have different poses that they could be used. It's really amazing. Then I have to admit that the amount of musicians make me strange, because sincerely I found them a bit too many, but I love the amount of standards because they give the idea of marching, and it's an amazing one. Remember that you had the option about the halberd or the sword and shield, but I prefer my idea about the shield on the back, because they have a sword for the most part on one side anyway. So anyway, it's something that give more option, and aesthetically I prefer with the halberd. They are really quite amazing. But I'm quite curious to know about what you think about and so on, because this it's a unit that conquered me, but are also to be conquering you. It's quite amusing to know, so write in the comment eventually. Anyway, from deynonmod it's everything. I invite you to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell so to receive notification about new video, to comment under here about this video, or if you want to suggest me new videos. So I hope to see you again to the next time.